Earlier today, I spoke with about those efforts with Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe. Premier, welcome back to Power Play. Thanks so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for taking the time, Mike.
Now, less than a month ago, you told my colleague Vassy Kapelos that US tariffs were avoidable. President Trump has been even more forceful in recent days. So do you believe that Canada can still avoid these tariffs?
I'm not sure if we can avoid them, but we should be making every effort to do so, or at least to limit any exposure that we might have to them. And listen, in the early days, President Trump had identified border security as an issue, and we need to be working, and I would say that Canadians are working on that and communicating that to not only the incoming Trump administration, but to governors, senators, congressmen across the U.S. And so we need to work together on concerns that our largest trading partner has. We are, as premiers and our current federal government and current prime minister, despite all that's happening in Ottawa, and we're going to continue to do so.
Do you think that there's enough time? There's about 10 days until inauguration.
Yeah, no, I think this is a very serious consequences that we're not just facing as Canadians, but ultimately Americans are facing as well. The minute those tariffs go on, from Saskatchewan's perspective, the oil that we send to the U.S. is going to cost more for Americans when they buy it at the pumps. The groceries that we send, the agri-food products, ingredients that we send to the U.S. are immediately going to cost more when Americans go and purchase their groceries. The timber supplies, the uranium that we send for clean nuclear power throughout the U.S., all is going to end up costing Americans more and ultimately costing each of us across North America more, whether it be in lower commodity and sale prices or whether it be when we go to the grocery store or to the fuel pumps. And so this is a negative conversation for us to be having when it comes to working together, Canada, the U.S., on continental energy security, continental food security, and ensuring that we are working together to satisfy the demands that the people here, or the wants that the people here, wants and needs that the people in North America have.
Now, what you just said there is the message that the Prime Minister has been trying to relay to Americans, even this week. Yesterday, he was on CNN trying to relay that message. Do you think he's been effective, and do you think that other Canadian politicians have been effective in giving that message to the U.S. and really getting through, punching through to a number of the lawmakers there?
Well, I'll maybe start with what the premiers are doing, and each of the premiers are reaching out to their collective contacts, whether that be folks in the incoming Trump administration, of which many of us do have connections, whether it be governors in states across the U.S., whether it be congressmen, senators, or business folks down in the U.S. Premiers are reaching out and doing that subnational relationship building that we always do, but I would say it's very much intensified the last while, myself included. I've had many meetings with various levels of governing individuals from across the U.S. At the end of the day, it isn't going to be premiers that are going to end the conversation around tariffs. They can support our federal government in that, but we are going to need a prime minister, and I would say a prime minister with a strong mandate, to sit with President-elect Trump, who will shortly be President Trump, who does have a strong mandate, likely the strongest mandate that I've seen in recent history south of the border. And so the challenging political environment that we have nationally here in Canada is not helping us. In fact, I would say it's putting us in a very vulnerable position. The Liberal Party of Canada, and with some assistance from the New Democratic Party or the NDP Party, is putting Canadians in a very vulnerable position. And so the sooner, I would say, that we can have a prime minister with a mandate that can sit with President-elect Trump today, but very shortly President Trump, to have that very serious conversation to not only end the tariffs, but to expand on the relationship between the U.S. and Canada, and ultimately contribute to the conversation around how we continue to work together to create that continental energy security and continental food security that we've done so well at doing over the course of the last 50, 100, 150 years.
To your point on the position of the federal government, yesterday on this show, Donald Trump's former national security advisor, John Bolton, said, quote, Canada is in a difficult position. And he linked it back to Justin Trudeau's resignation. What's your assessment of our negotiation position right now as it stands?
We're in a vulnerable position when it comes to our negotiating position. We have a a prime minister that is, stepping away, likely a leadership race that is going to happen. We have no one with any type of a mandate from Canadians to sit down and speak on behalf of Canadians to President Trump. We need that. And so we need an election sooner rather than later in this nation, regardless, and I don't say that as a partisan statement. We need someone to speak on behalf of Canadians that has a mandate that can sit across the table from Donald Trump, President Trump, and end some of these conversations. The Premier's efforts, other Canadians' efforts can only go so far in fostering that relationship and bringing that conversation to a head. But ultimately, at the end of the day, we need someone with a mandate to be able to sit in the room with President Trump.
I want to look forward past to a point where we may be seeing these tariffs applied to Canadian imports into the United States. Last month, you also said on this program that you're against the use of export tax on commodities like potash. Is that still your position, given the very serious threat we are facing right now? And I say that with the knowledge that for the year that ended last June, Canada provided 87% of all potash imports into the United States. And a number of people are looking at that and saying, we can withhold that and use that as leverage.
I would be concerned if any desperate Canadian government started taxing our exports into the U.S. or anywhere in this world. That would be the most divisive action that I'm aware of in recent history. And that is the wrong conversation for us to be having. We need to be having a conversation, and we need someone, a prime minister with a mandate to have the conversation with President Trump to not have tariffs, to respect the USMCA agreement that we had worked very hard, and a number of premiers worked alongside Chrystia Freeland in that instance with the previous Trump administration, to ensure that we do have market access for our products. Potash isn't even the largest export for us from Saskatchewan into the U.S. We export to 160 countries around the world. Those are commodities that can flow not only to the U.S. but to other areas of the world as well. We export oil into the U.S. They add value to that oil and ultimately sell it to Americans and back to us, I suppose, in many cases. And so export taxes are and should be always a non-starter for this government or the next government. And if the federal government, and they've assured me they're not looking at export taxes, but should they look at them, that would be the most divisive conversation that Canada has ever embarked on. And it would be extremely disappointing, troubling, and problematic moving forward.
So then what kind of leverage do you think that provinces should be looking at right now in the event that tariffs are applied from the United States? Where should we hit back then?
Well, we look for them to be lifted as quickly as possible. Listen, at the end of the day, for us to win as Canadians, and I would say equally for Americans to win, the tariffs can't be on. They just simply can't be on. If we are to build that strong continental economy that I would say we already have, and it's very integrated across the 49th parallel, and I tell the various stories of integration from Saskatchewan's perspective, whether it be in agriculture. We had steel tariffs that came on a number of years ago, and we were down in Washington, D.C., discussing how integrated just that particular industry is, never mind the auto manufacturing sector, the manufacturing sector more broadly. So we have to keep our eye on what the goal is here. And the goal is for no tariffs to come on. The goal is, if they do, for them to be removed as quickly as possible. And that is going to take engagement. That engagement is happening at the subnational level, and all of the premiers on our call this week had reiterated the conversations and the discussions that they're having with various political leaders throughout the U.S., myself included, likely 30 or 40 different meetings thus far, and those continue. Premiers will be down in Washington at some point in February, all of us collectively. Fostering that conversation of that non-tariff market access, building that strong continental economy conversation. But as I said, at the end of the day, we are going to need an election in Canada in order for us to have someone with an equivalent mandate to sit down with now President-elect Trump, but will be President Trump very shortly, to end this conversation around tariffs. Premiers aren't going to be able to do that part of this negotiation. We are going to need a prime minister to do it, and I would say with all of the chaos and happenings due to the Liberal Party in Canada recently, we need an election. We need it soon.
Premier of Saskatchewan, Scott Moe, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Appreciate it, Mike. You have a wonderful new year.